next speaker is going to kind of share what she's learned over her years of experience building up her career. She's going to give you day-to-day tricks to manage your own personal community and to get more involved in projects like creating your own advisory board. She's the head of community and customer experience at Freight Farms, where she leads company-wide initiatives focused on improving the customer journey. Previous to Freight Farms, Trish worked as Startup Institute's Global Director of Community and was Vsnap's Vice President of Community and Customer Experience. So someone who has seen the community role and has moved up into more and more senior roles and can kind of help you figure out how you can do the same. Although she says her most notable job to date has been Showroom Coordinator at Chuck E. Cheese, the OG Community Manager. Please give a big CMX welcome to Trish Fontanilla.
Woo! Thanks, everybody. And in case you were wondering I wasn't going to talk about Chuck E. Cheese, I will. Just you wait and see. So first off, thank you all for your time, for coming to my session. I did, because this isn't about Freight Farms at all, want to give, for anyone that's tweeting, a quick shout out to the customer support and customer success team at Freight Farms, because I am here and we're launching some really big things and they're holding it down. Even the president of the company is kind of pitching in. So if you're out there tweeting, be like, Trish just gave you a shout out on stage. Thanks for letting her be in Los Angeles, because we're back in Boston. So again, thank you so much. So let's talk about leveling up your career. So the first thing that we want to talk about is setting yourself up to succeed. And for anyone that has worked with communities, one of the core things you need to think about is the foundation. So what are you doing initially when you're working to set expectations? It's coming up with that job description. So how many people here have helped write their job description? Yes, that's amazing. I've fortunately, unfortunately, joined companies where there was no job description at all. And so thankfully to some of you that actually have job descriptions, I probably use some of yours as templates to write my own. So thank you very much. So sometimes when people think of job descriptions, they're generally supposed to be this, overhead, lightweight map of where your job is going to be going. Sometimes I've changed my job description as early as 3 weeks after I started. Sometimes I look back on it quarterly. I don't know how many people kind of save a copy of their job description on their desktop or even have it on their desk to kind of remind themselves where they're going and what they're doing, how they're advancing in that. Some people see it as like, my job description is life. Here it is, I've tattooed it. By the way, there's not a lot of words on my slides, so hope you're paying attention, following the visuals that I have. But it just needs to be this thing that helps you guide your way. And so I've taken a look at probably some of your job descriptions out here in the universe of where I want to go. So what is my job doing right now? And then also, when I was first starting out as a community manager, what are directors of community doing? What are VPs of community doing? If there's no job descriptions out there, what are different tasks that my company needs? Because there's all kinds of different communities out there, internal communities, external communities, et cetera. How can I combine these to make something that works for me and works for my company and helps my community and customers succeed? So making sure that you're looking at those job descriptions to help you. Be transparent. One of my favorite interviews that I've ever been on was my interview for Startup Institute. And the CEO at the time sat me down, and also, everything's an interview. I thought I was going for a free lunch, and I didn't get a free lunch. I got pulled into a room and asked what I wanted to do with my life. But the CEO said, if you got the job here, which I was like, wait, there's a job here? Very confusing. But if you worked for us, what would you do after this job? And I was like, wow, that's real. That's so awesome. Because in that one question, he was talking to me about what would help me advance in my career, one at that company, but almost this like alumni feel of when I set you free in the universe, when you leave this company, and I see you're doing an amazing job, I'm gonna be like, that was Trish, she started working here at Startup Institute. So being transparent and learning is amazing. And what I loved about him was he kind of acknowledged if you look at the core of what the company does, it makes sense because it helps people that are career changers find jobs at startups. So it's showing the investment in me, but I loved that question and I've used it ever since. Just kidding. Again, visuals. So I was just talking to someone the other day, how many times have you read a review or looked at a picture and it was filtered, or you read this job description and you're like, this sounds like an amazing place. Like, I really want to be there. And you go to that place to travel, you go to that place to work, and that view looks like a little more like this than it did like this. And this is very lovely. I don't know if you're into backpacking, but this might be, you're packing there's different clothing involved for these two different scenarios. Coming to that place where you are transparent, so what do you want to learn? What do you want to do? Finding that person that really wants to invest in you, and not just in your time at the company, but also just in your career in general. So finding those people, figuring out what you want to do. I don't know how many people, and this is a super tough task. There's a lot of homework assignments in this presentation, but how many of you have a personal mission statement? Yes. It's really tough to do, and it's funny because I've always pressured companies that I've worked at to get their mission statements, and some people are like, we're not those people, like, we know what we stand for, and I'm like, okay, what do you actually stand for? And they're like, you know, the vibe, and I'm like, no, like, put it into words. Some people hate the fact that the values are up on, you know, the walls, but sometimes we need those reminders. I would love to say that I embody my customer values, my community values all the time, but sometimes you do need that reminder. Next to, you know, the cat that's hanging on the limb and you're putting those together. But the importance of loving what you do is making sure that you have those values, that you're embodying them, and that they're connecting. But having your personal mission statement is always really helps me. And then also having like a working job description. So something that I'm always working and looking to do in addition to my personal job description. So now what? Finding job descriptions that inspire you, setting movable goals, so realizing what do you want to learn, what is your company going to teach you, is that a bi-weekly thing that you check in, is it a quarterly thing? I hate things that have year deadlines, and I think some people are like, oh yeah, man, like we talk yearly, like that's a horrible thing. But setting those movable goals, figuring out what you want to learn, what your company wants from you, and always revisiting that. And then iterating, making sure like, hey, I thought I was gonna really be able to tackle this thing. It's okay if you're not be able to tackle that, or if you need some help. But having that job description, having something to work off of, having that constant communication with your boss so that there is some transparency. It's always been easier for me to leave jobs when I've been very clear about, hey, here's what I want to do at this place. Here's the impact I want to have. I think our missions and our goals align a lot. And so when I've given notice, it's like, here's what we kind of like, here's the deal we made together. Here's where we started. And I haven't been able to learn those things. And I haven't been able to advance in this way. Is there a way that we can do this? Or does it mean that I need to go and work someplace else and help you find someone that would love to be in this position? So that honesty and transparency has been really helpful to me. I was just talking to someone, I've always in my community jobs been able to give 3 to 6 months notice, which is a little bit insane considering I came from the 9 to 5 and it was like, you give 2 weeks notice. But for everyone that's here, community is having, I always feel like a little, the first community that I was there for full time, where I was VP of community, we always talk about the divorce, so when I actually left the company, because it was such a core part of who I was as a human being and what I felt like it was me, really making sure that you figure out what's right for you and when's the time, which can be really tough to figure out when to leave. Tom Hanks, man. I was just thinking about this I was watching like an Inside the Actors Studio and Tom Hanks was talking about Saving Private Ryan. I won't do any spoilers because I realized I talked about a movie in another presentation of mine and like someone almost walked out because I gave a spoiler. So I'm hoping you all saw Saving Private Ryan, but there is a scene, I'm gonna be as nondescript as possible, where he tells another soldier, earn this, earn it every day. And I think something that can be easy to do, especially if you have repetitive work or you continue doing the same things, is you're not there at your job. You're always saying, well, I built this community from the ground up. Don't you realize what I did here? It's like, that's great. What are you doing to make this better? How are you continuing building this? So I say earn this every day. But ways to keep yourself excited is doing reviews and not waiting on people's times and not doing your reviews. So how many people here have a year review? And it's just the year? No, okay, good. There's some people like, yeah, we do an annual review. And for someone like me, I call startup years, I've worked in startups and tech for a little while, dog years. So it's like a lot can happen in 7 years. I was gonna sing Rent's 525, 600 minutes, but I will not today. Maybe later when there are drinks. But figuring out what your timings make sense for your reviews. So like kind of setting up a schedule, it really depends on what you're working on. A lot of the work I have right now is project-based, so it doesn't even have a timeline. I don't wait quarterly, I don't wait bi-weekly, I don't wait yearly. I actually do different sprints within my projects and map those out. But making sure that you're checking in with your boss. Some people actually don't do this as much as they should because there's a little bit of fear of the checking in, but finding out what you're comfortable with. And then also finding internal stakeholders that make sense for you and your projects that you might not normally think of that are either parallel to you or you don't actually report to. So one really amazing thing that I've seen talked about a lot here is the community involvement in product management and in product. If you have a product-based community and you aren't in the product meetings, let's get at it. Get in there, get a seat. It's really, really important for your voice to be there. And it's something that I continually fought for when I was working at more product-based companies and in my current company, having that seat there. When you're building your communities, do you have someone that's doing the graphics? Do you have someone that's doing marketing? Is there a developer that you're working with? Taking time to meet with those people outside of when you need to meet with them, continually checking in, talking about their process, all really important. I think I'll refer to this a little bit, the advisory board, but one of my favorite CTOs, I used to come to her and say, the community or customers say they want this moved around. And she actually used to make me go into Balsamic, which was this like sketch platform inside of Atlassian. And she was like, all right, if we take away this button, how many different pages is it gonna affect? And I was mind blown. I was like, wait, if we take this one thing away, you mean it affects 20 other pages? Just really meaning, I know, people are like, yeah, Trish, duh. But I was that early person that's like, can't we just take away this button? Is it really gonna hurt anybody? But having those people that are like, yes, Trish, it will affect many, many pages if we delete this. Meeting with those people that are different stakeholders, again, like CTO, I'm not reporting to that person, they're involved in projects I need to do, so I don't necessarily need to meet with them, but talking to them about what they're doing, about what I'm doing, always helped me have some internal good juju out in the universe, and it was really helpful for me. Another thing it's easy to get like really settled into your job. So there's the saying of always be employable instead of just being employed. I think like for me as a community person, going to things like this is almost like preaching to the choir a little bit, making sure you're continually expanding and learning more. It's easy to think that you're an expert and you go out and you meet these other community builders, you're like, oh my God, I've never heard of that before. I've never done that before. So it's easy to get and be an expert within your own company. And for me, that was one of my fears of actually leaving some of my community jobs is what if I find out that I'm just a good community person at my job, at my company, and I'm not actually a good community person out there? I've convinced people to continue to hire me, so some people in the universe think that I'm pretty good at my job. But it's also kind of fun, I think, for our job is we're inherently kind of forward-facing versus some people that are a little more internal. But things that you can do, and I actually do have some people that I worked with at past jobs, is making sure that you have these one-on-ones, continuing to network. I know for you introverts out there, sometimes the big events like this can be a little crazy. I'm actually an ambivert myself, which I'll delve in a little bit. But finding those places that make you, do those coffee chats. So meeting one person, and if you're not a big networker, finding them and saying, cool, can you recommend someone else for me to chat with as well, if you're not out and going into the universe? For me, hiring community managers, I love finding people that are super users in another community. So one of my first community jobs, I don't know if anybody else was on Yelp about 11 years ago. That was like my first interaction with community. And so when I was trying to make the transition, I had worked in higher ed. And they're like, have you done a community before? And I'm like, no, but I'm Yelp Elite. And they're like, what does that mean? What is Yelp? And I'm like, I actually go and like kind of moderate these random forum discussions. I don't know, people know early Yelp used to talk about the most random things that had nothing to do with food and nothing to do with anything, but then you would go and hang out with strangers on the universe. But I'm like, look what I do for companies that I don't work for. Early food spotting, I threw them a birthday party. Like I bought a birthday cake and like got into a venue. So I'm like, this is what I do when people don't pay me. Imagine what I can do if you pay me. So exactly. So people don't always realize there's things that you do in your resume. There's potluck dinners you run. Do you run your family reunion with over 100 people? Just continuing to build up those skills in different ways that make it fun for you. So figure out your annual review plan. If you are someone, what makes sense for you? Is it project-based? Is it quarterly? Is it bi-monthly, et cetera? Whatever makes sense for you. Finding the not-so-obvious decision makers, taking a developer out to lunch, taking the graphics intern out to lunch, talking to people that could be part of your internal team that isn't necessarily your boss or your manager's manager, et cetera. And continue to build your rep both externally and internally. Don't be afraid to get some help. It took me a really, really long time to ask for help because I was like, this is me, I'm an island, I'm gonna figure it all on my own. And then I realized, I can make my own advisory board. So I'm not gonna go into the idea of mentors too much because I think people understand the concept of mentors. For me, for the longest time, when I thought mentor, I thought Sean Connery, Indiana Jones. I'm gonna wait till the end of my career and be like, you kid back in DOS. I don't know if you understand. And that idea of like having to have learned a lot before giving back. But then I started mentoring middle school students, high school students, and doing peer mentoring, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. But for me in my community journey, I didn't really have anyone that I could look to early on to go to. So these are the different sides of my personality. So going back to being an introvert, I actually find I get energy from spending alone time. So I'll go like on week vacations by myself and talk to people, but I don't necessarily have to be talking to everybody. And then I also find energy from rooms like this because you're all so happy and smiley and amazing. So like I can also be like, hey, what's up, let's be best friends. But I could also be a little like that. Or I thought that this mentorship role is getting to know someone really, really quickly. So if you look at the community, so again, Chuck E. Cheese, a lot of different journeys. I was like, I don't see people, I have friends in sales and marketing, et cetera, that they know their path. It's you're a BDR or a sales rep, and then you become sales manager, sales director, VP of sales, chief revenue officer, et cetera. And I didn't really see anyone that was modeling my path. My background was Chuck E. Cheese, working in technology. I worked at H&M for a weekend. I worked for a radio station weekend. I worked in restaurants, and I worked in higher ed. And it wasn't until I kind of stepped back and realized I took myself out of what people think the traditional resume is. And I realized that every single job I had, I was essentially the first person you saw when you interact with someone. So it was like Chuck E. Cheese, I hosted parties, I was the first person you interacted with. When I worked in higher ed, I was the face of the department. When I worked at H&M for those 48 hours, I was the greeter that you met. So every job that I've had, even though they've been spread across the board, had this through line. But when I was looking for someone to go to, it was really hard for me to find that one person. So what I ended up doing is I created an advisory board, and my time's running really quickly, so I'll go over it a little bit. But I realized that I made my little mission statement, I wrote my job description, I'm like, okay, if I can't find one person, what if I find many people to help me? And that sounded a little evil. But what were the different things that I was lacking? So early on, I didn't know a lot about product, so I got a VP of product to kind of give me some advice. I didn't know a lot about sales. Salespeople kind of drove me insane. I talked to someone that was a director of sales and said, how do I get along with these people that want me to do these things? And I'm such a long-term sales goal person. And it was through getting introductions, through meeting other people, but finding these people that could kind of fill different pockets instead of finding that one person, because for me, it was really hard to find that one person that was gonna be my Sean Connery through life. So I figured I'd have a lot of different folks that can fill in different things. Some of my advisory board members do not know they're on my advisory board, which is one of the amazing things. I think with the mentor relationship, it's very deeply personal, and I think with the advisory board, at least I can go to different people for different things, and there isn't this pressure to kind of make it all happen. So the last slide is, do you need a mentor? I'm not knocking mentors, or could you do with an advisory board? So finding different people that you can tag for different things that'll help you fill out your skill set, help you work with your different teams. Getting referrals, so a lot of people, for me, when I'm talking about advisory boards, are like, how do I find these people? It's being open. I'm like, here's what I want to do in my career. Here's what I want to do in life. I'm missing this skill set where I want to know a little bit more about this development process so I can get my ideas across. Is there someone I can talk to that you think would be really good for me to chat with? And then get out of your comfort zone. So ambivert, extrovert, introvert, there's always people that will challenge you. I have that one person on my advisory board where people are like, why are you even friends? Like, who is this person? But I don't think you should surround yourself with head nodders. I think you should have those people that challenge you and challenge your beliefs. So I have this one person that actually is a little bit combative when I'm really excited about something. And I realized when I can actually defend what I'm doing, it's something worthwhile doing. And if they can tip me over really easily, it's not something I'm actually passionate about. So this person that actually is kind of the opposite side of me has helped me make some really important decisions in my life. So thank you so much for your time. I think the core is, if you're just paying attention or just came in, be kind, show up for yourself as much as you show up for your company, and pay it forward, and your job will be amazing. So thank you so much. Have a great time.